So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining our session today on digital workplace, workplace technology, smart workplace. We've got a great all-star panel, Paul Dupont from Pointr, Brennan McReynolds, and Emmanuel Daniel. Just kicking us off, I want to remind everybody that you can enter questions for us to answer in the second half of the session in the Q&A discussion area of the Zoom platform. My name's Aaron Lapsley. I'm founding principal of System 2, a consulting and engineering firm focused on technology for the built environment, and I'll be your moderator today. Really excited. We are going to start with a short presentation from each of our three panelists, and then we will follow up with a Q&A discussion. We've got some good discussion questions to go through, but if anybody would like to enter anything for our panel to answer, that would be really appreciated as well. So just kicking us off, I am going to set the stage here. What are we talking about today? Well, there's 9 foundations of the digital workplace that I've come up with that really form the core for what we're talking about. On the left-hand side, the left-hand 3 are related to actually interacting with the physical built environment. The middle 3 are about how workforce will use the facility and the workplace. And the right-hand 3 are about information and sharing and how we actually communicate with each other using the built environment. There's a lot that you can put into digital workplace, but I think this topic is incredibly timely right now because essentially every major corporate real estate group is thinking about what they're going to do for return to office. So we couldn't have a better time for this discussion today. And I want to thank Pointr for hosting today so that we can all get skilled up on what everybody's doing. So I'm going to introduce now the first panelist, who is Paul Dupont, Vice President of Sales at Pointr. He's responsible for leading and directing sales for global clients in industries such as commercial, office, retail, aviation, hospitality, and healthcare. Hey, Paul.
So yeah, wonderful to be here, everybody. Thanks for the introduction, Aaron. So I want to talk today about location in the workplace and rather location as an enabler for the workplace, but also to set the scene a little bit for Brennan and Emmanuel to go into a lot of detail on what is being done from an overall solution point of view as well. So very quickly, I'm Paul, I lead sales with Pointr, and Pointr, what we do is we build software that does indoor location. So we're not an app developer, we're not a hardware manufacturer, we just do software for location. We've been doing it for 8 years. We are deployed in around 1,000 different buildings around the world. We have around 2 million daily active users of our tech now. We are seeing a huge boom in demand for location tech in workplace, which is what we're talking about today, but we're also in retail, aviation, elsewhere. I'm in London, but we have our team in Boston now as well as around the world. In terms of where we're present, Pointr, we deliver location in for many different blue chip clients globally. Among those, we're super proud to be partnered with CBRE and providing location for CBRE Host, which Brennan will go into later, as well as a variety of other large clients. So for today, when we look at the smart workplace, what's painfully clear for many is how the pandemic has changed the way that we do things. So instead of having a desk per employee as we had in the past, in the future, people are going to be working very differently, right? So maybe partly from home, maybe partly in the office. And so we're going to see a difference in the way that offices are used. So expect desk flexibility. And then the desks that aren't being attributed to an individual employee, that space is going to be used for more collaborative kinds of interactions in the workplace. So expect more meeting spaces, expect a stronger focus on making it comfortable for employees when they're in the office. So more kind of hospitality services, facilities management kind of applications, and generally a focus on enabling employees to be productive no matter where they are, whether they're in the office or at home. And of course, there's going to be a lot of technology that's going to bring that to reality, whether that's technology for improving communication, collaboration in the office, whether it's security, making sure that people's files are secure, whether they're working from home or in the office, you know, regardless of where they are. There's going to be a lot of new technology bringing that about. And as Pointr, the part that we enable is around location. So, you know, we consider location as a real core enabler of the workplace of the future. So what do we do as Pointr? Firstly, we take floor plans. So for example, like your CAD files, and we turn those into maps so that when you're going into the office, you can look on your phone first and you can see where are the desks, where are the meeting rooms, can I book a meeting room, or where's the coffee machine, where's the printer, that sort of thing. And then we put your location on top of that map so you can see where you are as well. So if it's a large campus, if it's a complicated environment, if it's an office that you don't go to very often because you're working from home most of the time, you can still find your way there. And then, of course, we can provide location sharing as well. So where are your colleagues, as well as outdoor location. So we can help you find your way across a busy campus or across a large campus, as well as, for example, where did you park your car? Operationally, we can take that location data that's collected from users or employees as they walk around the office space, and we can do analytics on that. So where do people tend to dwell in the buildings? Are they in are they hanging around the coffee areas? Are they using the meeting rooms? Are they using the desk area? To help you really further improve the ROI that you get on your office space, which I think is going to be critical in the coming months as people start to go back in. We also enable many, many different third-party integrations, whether it's occupancy desk sensors, that sort of thing, or calendar booking integration systems. We enable maintenance reporting and many notifications around health and safety as well. So, for example, you know, if the printer breaks, you can just simply tap in your app that the printer is broken, and the location of that printer will be automatically put in there as well. So the IT team or the facility management team can come and fix it straight away without needing to call up and ask where it is. So that's what we do here at Pointr. Of course, we do more than that. We also enable super fast mapping with our map scale product, which allows you to do maps across many, many different areas very quickly, and AR, which is our really kind of fun way of helping users navigate a campus, where you can hold up your phone and you can see the routes that you need to walk plotted onto the ground below you. So this is a live demo actually from one of our client sites in Hong Kong. So that is Pointr. That's what we see for the future of the workplace. And yeah, I hope that was interesting. Please get in touch if we can help out with location. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Next, we're going to move on to Brennan McReynolds, who's the Global Product and Technology Lead for Hosts, which is CBRE's proprietary service offering for corporate occupiers and investors designed to meet the rapidly growing demand for employee and tenant experience in the workplace.
Thanks, Aaron. And great to be with everybody today. I'm going to quickly pull up my slides. And in 5 minutes, I want to quickly almost take a little bit of how Aaron started us, and we should go back to those 9 elements that he started with, because I think that's fundamental to thinking about the future of the digital workplace and how each one of us that are on this call today are thinking about our ownership and how we steer and guide that to support value and outcomes. Relative to CBRE's point of view and our investments, Host is ultimately our commitment to advancing and elevating the workplace experience through technologies such as the application, the platform we'll quickly walk through today, Share here at the bottom our mission, right? It's really important to think about this is why we exist within CBRE, not through the lens of brokerage and transactions necessarily, but CBRE as a provider of facilities and property management services. When you think globally across 5-6 billion square feet, where we're managing the assets, our job is to become an efficient service provider who's managing and looking after the experience of both employees and tenants. So our mission is to elevate that workplace experience by connecting the employee to where, how, and who they want to work while we optimize the delivery of spaces and services. At a high level, here's who we are. We are a team of dedicated people within professionals within CBRE that have the opportunity to build this platform. Aaron used the word proprietary, and I'd be careful to say this is a platform that's meant to be extensible, to bring in partners like Pointr, like Microsoft, and others that we worked with over the last 3 years to make sure we have a product that's inclusive within the environment and ultimately connects to our customers and our employees' digital workplace. I think what's most important about why CBRE has invested in this is because we have some inherent research and knowledge that we obtain as a real estate services firm to understand what's going on in the marketplace. And that research is telling us a lot of things in this moment today. And those elements are really around enabling choice at an employee level, which will really drive, as both Paul and Aaron alluded to, the future of the digital workplace and how we engage and create that employee interface with the physical space and the services. So a couple examples of our research that exists today. This is all publicly available on CBRE's website and our occupier research studies. But ultimately, 2/3 of employees are saying, yes, I want to go back, but I'm going to go back with choice. And I only want to go back 2 or 3 days a week. And I think a lot of us have heard and probably feel that same way. At the same time, our occupiers, the companies are saying, well, we're certainly amenable, and we'll be creating a more flexible, adaptable environment to facilitate that choice, which will ultimately make, as you see at the title on the slide, choice is this most valuable amenity to interfacing with the physical workplace, one another, and the services that exist within that. So what does that mean for all of us that are on the call? If you take Aaron's nine buckets, I want to now apply value to that, which is we fundamentally believe the role of a digital workplace platforms like Host and others that exist in the space today are here to drive and enhance employee experience, create employee performance, which means save employees time and making life a little bit easier, drive workplace experience, so the quality of that workplace experience, how do we understand the inputs from a user interface to drive the outcomes and experiences and spaces that exist when I physically go in. And then lastly, how do we take and aggregate all of that data into a way that helps us drive and understand the actual performance of the workplace? And that's utilization of spaces, utilization of services that exist maybe pre-COVID and after COVID, so we can continue to provide decisions and insights for our occupiers to understand how they should adapt the workplace to meet these future requirements, and that choice ultimately be enabled by employees. So we keep moving from there. Visually, our platform represents these in a number of different ways. If we go from left to right, those values that I just quickly outlined, employee experience, that's community news, events, things that are relevant to me to make sure I feel connected and informed and confident about my reentry back into the workplace and the role of the workplace. Then the performance is how do I create and facilitate experiences that save time and draw convenience? What you see here is a map, and then you see the blue dot. In the case of Pointr, they're providing location services that lets me align and understand what's close to me and the inherent recommendations that come through the Host application to say, here's the desk that you should book, here's a room that you should book through that recommendation engine. Workplace experience is really about optimization of the services I alluded to, so service requests or food and beverage or visitor management, things that are part of that day-to-day facilitation. And at the end of the day, workplace performance, as I alluded to, which is real-time IoT data that services itself in the app to make sure people have and are empowered to have choice. And we'll get into the discussion with Emmanuel and Paul a little bit later around the pros and cons here. I think ultimately I share all this not to say this is about Host as much as this is about prioritization. And as all of us look to participate in the decision-making around digital workplace apps and technologies, it's really important you align with your stakeholders around those priorities. And one example of that is this smart IoT kind of, whether you call it a funnel or different levels of fidelity, understanding occupancy in real time is a fundamental part of how we go back into the workplace and understand how it's being utilized. And there's different ways to accomplish that with technology partners like Pointr, other sensor providers like Density, Regato, Yanzi. There's a number of folks that are out there that we partner to integrate with within CBRE to deliver different levels of fidelity around the way that space is being consumed and used. And that just from top to the bottom of the funnel, as you guys can read on the slides, that's at a building level, a zone or a floor, an individual space, typically enclosed spaces, obviously rooms, and then individual unique locations within the space itself. And there's inherent value across each one of those, and then different ways to deploy technologies to support that. And we look to bring in best-in-class partners to help us deploy that within CBRE for our occupier clients. I think lastly, Paul alluded to this, being able to take that heat map and provide relevant information to a user in real time where people have been maybe previous to where you're currently occupying space helps us create a more confident and informed workplace, and where we're leveraging location data as Paul walked us through. And then lastly, I think just talking about occupancy in general, really driving into understanding real-time information relative to the spaces, and then relative also to the booking data, the reservation data of that space. So you really begin into this direction of the intent to use space, the intent to go into the workplace, to be with one another, and then the actuals. And that allows us to then begin to right size the way we think about overall space. So look forward to future conversation on the back half of this webinar. Hand it back over to you, Aaron.
Thanks, Brennan. The employee workplace experience performance 2x2 is a really good lens on this type of technology. Next, we're going to move on to Emmanuel Daniel, who's the Director of Digital Transformation and Smart Buildings and Campuses for Microsoft. In this role, he is responsible for building and delivering the digital transformation strategy for campuses across the company, and he leads a multidisciplinary team of business and technical architects and experienced designers.
Good morning, and thank you so much for the invitation to Pointr, and it's a pleasure to be on the panel today. My name is Emmanuel Daniel, and I lead the digital transformation solution and strategy for Microsoft's upcoming campus in Redmond. What you're seeing on screen now is the artistic rendering of what our future campus would look like. As you go through it, and I'll show you stats and figures of what this campus actually translates to, but this is the artistic view. Physically, what would the campus look like? How is it going to evolve? And what we see this campus coming to be? The question that came to our mind when we started the campus transformation was, what do we want to do? What is the vision or the aspiration we're trying to head to? And the first thing that came to our mind was to be able to build, deliver, and operate connected, sustainable, accessible, and secure workspaces that create the best employee experience. Now, the goal for us is, in addition to the important elements of efficiency, sustainability, and growth, we wanted to focus on employee experience. Why was experience key, and why was it crucial to us? Was we tried to hone in on 3 key value drivers. The goal for the campus, or one of the biggest goals, is for us to be able to attract and retain top talent. This is a place for people to come, to grow, to innovate, to learn, and to be able to evolve in what they're doing. Next, any campus that you create has to be cost effective. Therefore, on the size of operating a campus as large as what we're trying to build, it is important for us to be highly cost efficient and ensure the assets have got better performance efficiencies, uptime, and lifetime as well. And finally, use the campus as a platform to accelerate growth for Microsoft, where all that we are creating and doing is an opportunity for anybody else across the globe to be able to replicate, where our focus on employee experience and engagement is what is going to drive better outcomes for everyone. Now, when we started to do this, we said, how do we start? Where do we begin? And in terms of size and scale, the new campus that we're building out here is around 72 acres, 17 new buildings, 2.5 billion square feet of workspace. Around 12,000 people will work on this campus. In terms of the BIM components that go inside it, you're talking about 2.8 million 3D building components, 9.5 miles of fiber optic cabling. It is highly sustainable. Therefore, 1.3 times the size of Empire State Building is the concrete from demolition. We actually demolished 14 buildings, and we're bringing up 17 buildings. And eventually, 95% of all of the demolition waste has been recycled. Now, when we started, the question was, where do you start? How do you begin? What do you have to focus on? For digital transformation of the built environment, the entire focus has to be both top down and bottoms up. And what does that mean? For us, we started with the master plan. This is not just the Redmond campus. It is our vision and aspiration to be able to replicate the experiences across all our campuses globally. And you'd have seen multiple announcements where Microsoft has said we've got new campuses coming up across the globe. Our aspiration is any employee that walks into any office in any part of the world will have the same set of experiences that he or she should get, customized for, geographical reasons or local cultural reasons. So one, we start with the master plan. How is the campus going to look? How is it going to be built out? How is space going to be designed that is going to suit the work styles of the people that we have within our buildings? Next, we start talking about the building themselves. What should the structure of the building look like? What should the facade of the building be? Then we start looking at the core infrastructure. What assets are going to go into that building that are needed for building operations, building functioning, and for elements of the services that are needed? Then we start going up and then we're saying, okay, now we've got the master plan sorted out, you've got the structure sorted out, you've got core elements sorted out. What data do you need to capture? And for capturing that data, what type of devices you would need? And finally, you roll up and you start looking at the experiences that you can offer. And once again, experiences are not static. Experiences evolve over time. Different types of people have different types of experiences. Therefore, you are basically creating a platform for the evolution of experiences that depend on the people that come into contact with your campus. Now, once we have this sorted out, our next angle is saying, okay, how do you create the experience, or what should the experience embody? And our view here was, we then said, the experiences are not about individual personal work styles or work styles based on job classification. We said people have different needs as they go through the evolution of their life cycle. And so we started focusing on behaviors. Behaviors will dictate that an individual person can go through different forms within their life. For example, you can join Microsoft straight out of college. You then get promoted, you become a manager of a team, you then decide to have a family and you buy a family home. Priorities start to change, and then eventually you will evolve to become an executive. Throughout the course, what is happening is you as the individual are constant, but the type of services that you need to be able to do your job more effectively has evolved. And that's why we said, let's start looking at behaviors. And these behaviors will tend to be universal across all types of employees. Based on that, we will create services that evolve. Therefore, the campus truly evolves with the human being and provide services that are essential for them to be able to carry out their tasks effectively. What you'd see here are different types of experiences, looking at different types of work styles and different types of people, but that's the aspiration. Experiences have to be inclusive and accessible to everyone who comes into contact with these buildings. Now, once we understood what our aspiration was and what we wanted to do for our campus, our whole goal is in saying, okay, it has to be an end-to-end experience. And what does an end-to-end experience mean? It's not just about coming down to the office and booking a room and having a meeting or having a cup of coffee or doing your work and going back. It's about, as soon as you wake up in the morning, how do I do my route planning so I'm able to get to office in a way that I like? Is it using shared bus services? Is it using ride sharing? Is it using my own car? Or I could possibly walk down or bike down to the campus. How am I going to engage the employees so that I give them the option based on the situation that they are in, how best to get to the office? Now, if they so decide to drive, we heard from Brennan, Paul, and Aaron as well on the importance of location-based services. Why is that critical? It is all about driving efficiency in terms of how do I get to my location? How do I park my car? How do I find my way to the closest meeting room or to a colleague I would like to interact with? How do I carry out my engagement? And how do I go back home? So driving the engagement of people interactions in the physical environment that they are in is what location is all about for us. And what we like to call it is accidental collisions. You go to the office and, with the changing work styles, the hybrid workplace is going to happen. Now, okay, in that, I come to office to meet and fulfill a specific need. To drive efficiency in terms of how that need is going to be met, I need to know where I am, what I'm going to do, who I need to meet, and what type of physical space I would need to drive the optimum amount of collaboration. That's why the choice of room, the configuration of the room, the ambient environment, the ambient spaces, all the elements starts to fit in. And you'd realize the dependency of data starts to grow. Finally, at the end of the day, all wrapped up and you decide to go home. So what are we looking at? So from our perspective, when you start with the experiences centered on people centered around different types of consumption patterns of the service, you all of a sudden realize, I need tons of data. Buildings have always collected data for generations, but then what type of data do you need to drive these engagements across the campus that you would have? From that data, students start to realize that to be able to unify this data and to bring all of this together, I need to create a platform. This platform would allow me to break individual system silos, bring the data together and create an experience. And through this platform, I'm then able to uniquely identify the core systems and subsystems that a building would have to be able to make it a connected, secure, and accessible building. All this built on 3 strong foundations. Sustainability is core to what we're doing. The accessibility is absolutely crucial. We design services for everybody and anybody that comes into contact with our buildings. And finally, all the data that we collect, only the relevant kinds of data, we're going to ensure that we keep the utmost standards of privacy as we offer these services to anyone that comes to our campus. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Emmanuel. That was great. Okay, I think that ends our presentations and we'll move into a panel discussion. We have a couple questions that have come through, one that I typed an answer to, but that we should probably touch on. It's a bit technical, so we might leave that one to the end. One just came through about space management. I think we'll get going and then move into that one. Let's start off with what are the best practices for enabling a smart workplace? And so in particular, what we wanted, I think, to touch on is what tends to be forgotten as you are going through and developing a smart workplace strategy and roadmap. So Brennan, I think I'll kick it to you to start.
Well, I think there's a lot of different kind of layers to this question. I think the first one is making sure all the right stakeholders are involved. The last 12 months have really led us to seeing a renewed alignment between real estate organizations, HR, and IT. And as you look to move into this type of investment, whether you're building it yourself or whether you're going to partner or procure a solution, having all the right stakeholders involved is number one. And then once you have everybody in the room, then create your list of priorities. And that's the one thing I can't stress enough, whether it's Aaron's 9 box or whether it's the things you're looking to accomplish. We are actively seeing a ton of RFPs hit the marketplace, specifically for digital workplace experience platforms. And sometimes we get everything in the kitchen sink in those RFPs because everybody wants an app to do everything, and that's just not realistic today. You really need to think about value and user experience first. So I think it's about understanding what are we trying to unlock, what are the behaviors you're trying to drive to support the workplace and ultimately the employee to enable that choice, and then go from there. So I know that's kind of a generic high-level question, but it really is like, are the right people in the room and do you understand what you're trying to accomplish? Before we get into, does it have this feature, or does it book this room a certain way, is really more about overall outcomes.
One thing I would like to add, Aaron, is that, and a great answer, Brennan. I think you hit all the key points really well there. The understanding what is it you're trying to do in a workplace strategy. There is always confusion when you're talking about an operations strategy and a workplace strategy. Though intertwined and though connected, they're very, very different. And the element for that is mixing operations along with workplace management is not going to allow you to design the services for consumption. Or mixing workplace management with operations is going to cause you to focus on a hypersensitive and a highly efficient workplace, which probably does not meet the needs of the occupant and the residents consuming there. Chalking out the differences of saying, okay, is my workplace going to be engaging? Is my workplace designed for specific types of collaboration? Or is my workplace just a casual hangout? And then defining what type of engagement modes will take place, which would then go around to how the space is designed, how the space is positioned, the tech that goes into space, and the consumption patterns. Because ultimately, the goal for anyone in real estate is about making that space effective. So driving that effectiveness by combining both operations and space management is one goal that people tend to forget. They choose either or, and in my perspective, it's both.
And hey, Aaron, if I could add on it, because Emmanuel said something that's really important there, which is like the operational component to all of this is fundamental in terms of who's going to own it after you go live, right? What's the day-to-day change management from administering the tool, making modifications, understanding the communication flow that happens through the technology is fundamental. And when you think about what we're getting ready to go through as a real estate community and bringing people back safely into the workplace, gradually, it's a huge change management lift in itself plus administering a new employee-facing tool that they're going to download and what that impact is. There's inherent questions around privacy and location services. So if you don't have the comms team or a change management leader to help really guide the handoff into the employee's hands, and then the ongoing operations and ownership of the tool once it's live, or tools, right? It's fundamentally important. That's what's forgotten, right? It's kind of like, oh man, I got to get Marcom now involved and they need to sign off on this. And they're like, what do you mean I'm deploying an app to employees' hands? Like, you got to have everybody on the boat first before you.
That's a big one, right? So like I usually find with clients that finding and identifying ownership in the sense like, can I draw a RACI diagram? Can I write down who has the A for this app or this supporting process for the app is usually the hardest thing in these. You can get everyone to the table, but then where the money comes from and who actually owns it is complicated because it's across buckets and it's oftentimes across like some people have a P&L and some people are just a cost center. And so it's even different budget types. And so this can be a huge challenge in figuring out kind of ownership and ongoing maintenance. I've got two more things I would add. Kind of one is tactical, right? And so I've been working with some clients recently, and some of the things that get left behind are things that don't necessarily fit in the 9 buckets I showed you. So if you think of this technology in layers, there's foundational infrastructure, there's software applications above that. And then what we're kind of talking about is really a unified application layer that sits on top of that. And everybody wants to go straight to that, importantly, right? You want to figure out what you want to do, the strategic way to do it, but you have to get down to the infrastructure. And so many of the things related to employee or workplace experience are about making sure there's enough Wi-Fi and things like that. And so as a lot of clients are going back into the workplace, they're removing hardwired desk points and moving to flexible seating options and things like that. You've got to revisit all of your basic infrastructure to make sure that it will actually work. And then the other bit that's a little bit sort of higher level into that unified application layer is you have to think very carefully about not having too many apps and too many solutions. So building the integrations in a way that they are truly embedded and seamless is probably worth the expense, but it can be costly, especially if you're building your own app.
So if I can riff over the top of that as well. So I think that framework that you brought in, Emmanuel, that shows the different layers when you're building it up, that's a hugely useful tool. And when it comes to doing an actual deployment, when you're bringing in all kinds of new smart solutions into the building, to your point a second ago, Aaron, looking at the hardware that's there, and if you have the opportunity to do a hardware refresh, what can you bring in so that 3 months down the line, when you realize there's some cool application that you want to, or some cool feature you want to integrate, that your hardware that's already gone into the building is ready to go. Always super helpful when that's in place.
All right, good question came through here, Paul, that may actually be a good one for you. So when you're doing floor plan-based maps and translating that kind of design document into the digital world, it's sort of a component of building a digital twin in a way. There is a lot of process to do that, to actually convert the CAD files. Brennan, you probably have a pretty good perspective on doing this at very large scale, I would imagine too. So, the question is, if space planners are using CAD or CAD-like vector files for initial space designs and they're converted into maps of the campus, how do you deal with the change management of the CAD files? What kind of process do you put in place? I love this stuff because this is the stuff, to your point, Brennan, about operationalizing it. They're like, this is what will make it actually work or not. What happens the first time a building goes through another TI project and you need to then update all of that? Do you have location master data streamlined in a place where that's easy to do?
So if you have hundreds of offices, hundreds of buildings around the world, how do you make sure that your content is accurate on top of those? So, I mean, this is a great opportunity for me to plug our product MapScale. So thank you for the question. Essentially, the approach that we have as Pointr is we take floor plans, we convert them using our automated tool into into those digital maps. We then have a layer of content that goes on top of the map, and that content can be updated automatically based on changes to the floor plan, and then pushed to the user. So content is a really important thing to consider, whether you want to manage it manually or whether you want to have an automated solution to make sure it's up to date. There's a bunch of different ways to go about that. I think Brennan and Emmanuel probably have sort of a more hands-on understanding of what that means in real life as well.
Yeah, I mean, and Paul, what Paul mentioned here around map scale, I've seen it. It's pretty slick in terms of its ability to immediately digitize. You know, historically, we have clients that have everything from 40,000 square feet and hosted one floor to 3 million square feet across their global portfolio. And the initial lift to digitize all that does take time. Now we've find a way to optimize that through leveraging some internal shared services centers, but ultimately it does mean you identify and your systems of record, whether that's an occupancy planning tool, and then you look at how you convert changes in that system of record into your digital workplace app, which are things that we're working on to advance our platform as well. So it is one of the most important parts of this at scale for this product category to be relevant, because the moment this is about building trust with the end user and the employee. The moment I go in there and it's not relevant from a floor plan level, that trust just went down a notch, right? And if the news isn't up to date or something's out of date or something's expired, it keeps going down, right? And it's hard to build that back up. So it's really about understanding, what is your current experience tech stack as an occupier, and then who's going to own the maintenance of each one of those into kind of this new experience tool, and then who's going to own the ongoing relevance of content, floor plans, et cetera.
The perspective I like to bring is from the owner of real estate. The biggest challenge that we face is going to be renovation or retrofit of buildings. And that's where you then start looking at the relevancy to Brennan and Paul's point, the relevancy of the floor spans, the workspace, or the BIM/CAD/CAM files that you would have, or the DWG files that are produced. The challenge always has been buildings are not built for a year or two, right? You build building for 30, 40 years. The structure stains. However, inside the building, the interior renovation or the interior design keeps happening every couple of years, 2 to 5 years, depending upon what office, what location you're in. The challenge is as the workspace inside evolves, right? You bring great new furniture, great new paint, great new layout. Your BIM files don't change to reflect the change in space. I all of a sudden decide I want to put a new drywall somewhere here because this little spot, a small corner room is more efficient compared to larger meeting rooms. The cost element of maintaining these files is expensive. And when you're talking about operations is a very cost-sensitive business, right? I just can't boost the ops budget like how I would boost any other budget. So managing the life cycle of these files and having two-way updates, we spoke about the app layer. Any change that is going to happen on the renovation side, even if it is as simple as adding something as a new Bluetooth beacon, right, to drive higher densification of my wayfinding approaches, getting that imprinted on your BIM file through a documented process in terms of how the updates would happen. Because ultimately, when you talk about construction, I'll go back to BIM. When I'm going to talk about experiences, I'll go back to maps, right? Driving consistency of data across both these locations is going to be critical. And that's the only way a smart building can survive. A break in updates on either side would render each of them useless. And that's key. So lifecycle management of BIM is going to be crucial as buildings start to evolve.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's not just for map data, by the way. I mean, I've done a lot. The world I come from historically was integrating a lot of HVAC data out. It's a different but related digital twin type of concept. So you pull the HVAC data out of the building automation system or BMS, you organize it, structure it, you're able to do analytics or energy management, project development, or whatever the sort of end use cases are. It's similar with lighting, it's similar with asset data. There's a whole bunch of different categories of data in buildings that have this problem. When you go and change the building, they need to be updated. So I honestly believe that the last 10 years of smart buildings was us figuring out building applications so that we can demonstrate the value of what to do with software and digital technology in real estate, which I think is largely the case. That, to a large extent, is complete now. We for the most part know what needs to be done as an industry. And yeah, there's a roadmap to get there, but the biggest barrier right now is still cost. And part of that cost is ongoing operations and maintenance costs. If you look at like the average sort of multi-data type digital twin, the reason that that's not set up everywhere is because it's hard to do and expensive to maintain, and then therefore the life cycle benefit does not necessarily look larger than the cost right now. So I think the next 10 years of prop tech, or of smart building tech in particular, is going to be around figuring out how to more efficiently get things onboarded and keep them up to date. There's a lot of focus that needs to go into plumbing right now, and there's a ton of money to be made in plumbing for all of us, data plumbing. Kind of on that note, a question came in from Vajid in the audience who asked about what other technologies around IoT and predictive analytics are your organizations betting on? Microsoft, Pointr, CBRE all have a heavy hand in this. So from building solutions and property management perspective, what are you looking at as kind of the next wave of things for smart building, smart workplace?
I think for us at the moment, content management, making sure your content is properly done, that's key, as is just getting the right hardware into place. So that for us at the moment is Bluetooth, but in the future it could be UWB or other technologies, as those technologies get better and more mature. So I mean, I think at the moment we've got something that already works pretty well. There's already a very good solution, but there will for sure be other technologies coming, maturing in the years, probably in the next 2 to 3 years.
I think maybe just to add on that, if you think about the content element, anything that is contextualizing the experience for each individual user and helps us do that better, to enable better choice, and making sure that any technology feels relevant to that consumer is what we're focused on, right? So whether it's a recommendation engine that drives which office you should go into, which desk you should sit at, which room, or the services that should enable the workplace, that contextual layer is just fundamental to really a year's worth of compounded consumer expectations sitting here in our homes, getting Uber Eats or whatever on-demand service, for a year now, and now we're going to go back and I'm going to put a piece of technology and it's not going to behave that same way. It's not going to feel relevant, and it's immediately going to have, going back to the kind of loss that's attributed to that lack of context. So that's really where we're looking across the spectrum on, from a tenant and occupier experience standpoint, is how do we better make sure this feels relevant to the role of the workplace and to each individual user.
The one point to add to that, from my view, as a member of Microsoft's real estate team, the biggest challenge for us is about balancing the growth or aspiration of employee experience with the infrastructure, because ultimately space is money in our line of work. And when you talk about additional devices, you're talking about additional power, you're talking about additional data ports, you're talking about additional switches, cabling, everything just goes up, right? As easy as it is to capture data, the complexities of managing that infrastructure also goes up. As the experience evolves, and our aspiration is to build that platform would then allow us to grow and customize these services, because services don't remain constant. Even something as simple as booking a room, as easy as it may seem, is not just about booking the room. Room booking has a lot of aspects to it. You're talking about finding the right room, the right size of the room, the ambient environment of that room, the location of that room, and in situations like today, how clean, how efficient is that room going to be? You're talking about placement of devices, placement of assets. So it's a lock, stock, and barrel solution for us. So for me, the challenge always has been managing the infrastructure coupled with the data on a platform that would allow me to evolve services. So digital twins is one such concept, where I'm going to take my space and the elements and try to digitize it. But the key is not just creating digital twin, maintaining, evolving, and growing that digital twin based on the needs of the users is going to be the challenge that the tech world is going to come up with. Because ultimately, the relevancy of space to the individual that works inside is what we're trying to drive through the experiences. Yeah,
that makes sense. I'll throw in one that I know Microsoft is investing in, because I've been through the tour and the demo, which is the HoloLens for facility management, is going to get very, very interesting. I know that's less sort of workplace experience focused, but the ability to work between a centralized operations function and people in the field on complex technical topics is absolutely real today. And we really just need to figure out places and applications to implement it. Okay, I want to finish out today probably with the topic that I think we were probably all most excited to talk about whenever we did our prep session. And that's, okay, if we're going to build a workplace or employee experience app, should we build it or buy it? I've seen clients do both, even in the last 6 months. This is a consistent decision point. When you build out the framework for how to, deliver even a services engagement around these capabilities, you always end up with a milestone on that project plan that is around building or buying. So very open, very interested in everyone's thoughts on the right way to think about that decision, because it's really different from everyone. There's no right answer. So Brendan, maybe we start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all bias aside here, right? Acknowledging that we've built our own and it's being used by many customers. I think, and I wrote a client an outline of this exact topic yesterday, just helping inform them the things to look at, right? Which really comes down to do you have the right stakeholders? Because each of those stakeholders will have their own set of requirements and priorities. Do you understand your existing infrastructure from a workplace and real estate standpoint? I.e., are there legacy on-prem solutions that are in the process of also being upgraded, right? So you kind of need to know what you got and what that inherent upgrade cycle is before you can start worrying about the future-facing employee experience. And without that, you're going to continue to chase legacy tools and upgraded integrations and APIs. Once you kind of have that foundation established, then it's a matter of that prioritization conversation, whether you take the 9 boxes that Aaron has and say, let's rank those and then understand what you need to deliver. Because at scale, if you try to tackle all 9 at once, you're going to boil the ocean. You're not going to get to where you want to go. Second is that each one of those has a number of rabbit holes attributed to the detailed, well, now that I can book a room, now I need to book a room and add catering to it. Well, now that I'm going back to the workplace, I need to request a certain configuration of a space because I'm only going in to collaborate with my colleagues, right? So it's not just about that initial integration into room booking, but it's about the long-term effects on the workplace and those inherent changes and requests that are going to come from your business stakeholder. And the moment you acknowledge those, then you can begin to say, wow, do I go down and just commit to a rabbit hole, or do I find a partner who's rapidly iterating within the overall digital workplace landscape that exists today? There's a ton of prop tech money right now. It's a gold rush for prop tech. There's a lot of great companies out there that are building solutions and are there to continue to improve. So how bespoke do you need your solution, and what are you willing to commit to when you go down a rabbit hole versus maybe being a part of a broader ecosystem of partners is my general guidance.
It's a great question because we get that question all the time. What we try to focus on is, and you brought that point up really very nicely, Aaron, just before this, where you said the importance of cost associated with operations is going to be crucial. And we use that as a measure because ultimately it's very easy to build a hyper-connected building and overdo the operations cost to such a level that the building becomes inefficient and you have to shut it down. That's not what we want to do. Buildings have to be highly efficient and highly operational. And that's why when we start talking about building an app or a service, the goal has to be choosing a specialized partner or a capability who's able to offer that service offering to you. There may be elements that you would like to own and maintain, and that's the case for all of us. And that has to do with elements surrounding the type of the service, the type of data that you're collecting, and the privacy associated with that, right? And we get that. But at the same time, there are also services which are much better offered and maintained by our partner ecosystem, where they drive faster time to market, they drive better scale, and they drive better manageability. And we're looking at buildings today. Buildings are this beautiful heterogeneous landscape where everything ideally should work seamlessly in a beautiful orchestrated flow, but that's not how it always is, right? You always have ups and downs in buildings. But bringing together multiple combinations of service providers and weaving them together in a building, because services in a building are very, very complex. It's not just about one service or one app. It's an app that has multiple services being pulled in through 30 or 40 subsystems that have to coexist within a building. So you choosing who is the relevant vendor or partner that is going to allow you to manage that data or that. For example, if you talk about integration between a lighting management system, you're not going to build your own lighting management system. You would rely on a partner or a supplier out there that's going to come and say, hey, I have a lighting management system. What you would then do is saying, okay, I would like to have X, Y, and Z data elements coming in so I can customize the services. The same happens for indoor location services. The same happens for a parking guidance system as well. Choosing that, working with the ecosystem to build out the specialized services, and you taking ownership of either providing that end service or that visualization or some other form, is what you have to identify. So the crucial thing, pick your service, choose what your skills are, and based on that, do a combination of both, because that's the best way to sustain.
Yeah. In some ways, it's a false dichotomy, that we sort of simplify that decision. In reality, there's a lot of levels of build and build/buy in the middle. I mean, there's platforms out there that are sort of back-end integration platforms that allow you to customize the front end. There's almost, even if you do buy and implement, there's usually some element of customization ultimately to get to your roadmap at the end of the day. Whether it's just front-end branding or an integration that doesn't exist within that ecosystem today, or you've got to do the implementation to your version of Workday or PeopleSoft or whatever's in the background. It really always is. It's never quite as black and white as build versus buy. But the consideration that I would toss on to that is think about speed, because even companies that implement their own workplace apps successfully tend to be ones that have a strong digital capability, but that strong digital product capability tends to be busy in their day jobs of working with that company's customers. And so, do you have enough capacity in order to deliver this project as a priority? If it turns out it is a priority, and usually for the chief human resources officer or CFO or whoever's in charge of real estate and HR, it is a priority. And so time, schedule matters a lot, particularly, kind of as Brennan pointed out, those like day one really essential items to get back. Paul, any thoughts as a foundational component of many of these apps, what you've seen on the build buy distinction?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's something we come across all the time as well, right? So it's, to Brennan's point, this is a gold rush for prop tech. There are, I mean, even before the pandemic, billions of square feet that need this kind of digital workplace solution to be rolled out, and that's only accelerated. And so it's natural that there are going to be many different solutions that fit certain requirements for particular companies. Whether it's if you're maybe a smaller company and you don't have the resources, then your situation will be different to if you're a larger company and you can build it yourself. Equally, sometimes it's easier just to get a service provider in to help you out with that. At Pointr, we do both. We're a technology layer that fits into any app for workplace, and so it's genuinely super interesting to see which companies go down which routes and the reasons for it, and it's really exciting to see how that's going to play out over the next few years.
Okay, well, I think we are nearing the end of our time here. So I think, Paul, you were going to give us some few words in parting.
Yeah, sure. So I guess firstly, thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, Brennan. Thank you, Aaron, for coming in and sharing your experience and your knowledge on this. I don't think there are two companies out there that can provide this level of detail and have this level of knowledge that can be shared with the audience. So it's fantastic to hear that from you. So anybody that's interested in learning more, feel free to get in touch. If you're interested in learning more about how location services can help, here are my details on the screen. Feel free to reach out to us. But I guess other than that, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Aaron, for moderating and guiding that conversation as well.